Hi everyone, it's Voula McLaughlin here from Reaching for the Stars Children's Foundation. Thank you for joining us today with our series, our Zoom speaker series, Consciously Connected, where we're speaking to experts on how we can be more present and connected with our kids. Today, I'm very, very happy. I'm excited that I found this special guest. Her name is Dr. Leigh Vanderloo. Having received her PhD in health promotion from the University of Western Ontario in 2016, Dr. Vanderloo's area of research focuses on the objective measurement of young children's physical activity levels and sedentary time. Her research interests also extend to the impact of the outdoor environment on young children's activity behaviors. Dr. Vanderloo has published some of the first national and international papers examining the variability in young children's activity levels across various early learning environments, as well as exploring approaches for improving objective measurement in this population. Currently, Dr. Vanderloo is working as the Knowledge Translation Manager at ParticipACTION and is also a research fellow at Sick Kids Hospital in Toronto, where her research examines the association between physical activity and sedentary time with cardiometabolic risk in young children. That was a mouthful. Thanks for being with us, Dr. Leigh. I appreciate your time.
Yeah, thank you for having me. Happy to be here.
So, of course, with that bio, I think people kind of know where we're going to go with this. When we want to talk about physical activity and physical fitness and what all that means in the backdrop of COVID. But I also, before we get into that, is you're with ParticipACTION, and I am in my 40s, and I remember ParticipACTION with Body Break and Joanne McLeod, and it was, I think, Hal Johnson. They were a couple. Yeah. So I do remember that on TV a lot, but you know, now that I have kids and many of our followers and our supporters are watching this, they remember ParticipACTION that way. So can you tell us about ParticipACTION in 2020? I mean, what are they all about right now?
Yeah, so I mean, very similarly to the message that Hal and Joanne were kind of promoting about, you know, get fit, have fun kind of thing, I think was their tagline. I do remember some of their videos when I was younger. And in fact, when I got this job at ParticipACTION, almost everyone asked me, like, are you going to meet Hal and Joanne? So they're no longer with the organization, but yeah, so essentially ParticipACTION, we're a nonprofit organization in Canada, fully bilingual, and our main goal is really to help all Canadians move more and sit less. We really want physical activity to be a part of every Canadian's identity and to really kind of help support Canadians all across the country in terms of finding, you know, unique, creative, and fun ways to integrate more movement throughout their day, and just to be mindful of how much time we're spending sitting or in front of screens.
And so how timely is this that we're talking? I mean, when I went onto your site, I saw, first of all, I love the website. I was blown away by it. As a mom. So I'm coming at this conversation as a mom, and we have our foundation where we're helping kids. So there is that hat I wear, but as a mom, when I went on that site, I thought, wow, this is so helpful. We have to share this. But what I came across was the first thing that I saw was this report card. And you guys did this study and gave us a mark as, you know, our kids and families and what we're doing with our kids. And I wanted to get into, why did you guys do this report, this study, and when it was done? I think it was done recently, and how it was done, who was a part of this, and you know, how credible is this for us to look at and say, okay, yeah, these are the real numbers, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so the 2020 ParticipACTION Report Card on physical activity for children and youth was released June 17th, I believe. So pretty much almost exactly a month ago. And so the main purpose of this, so this is actually our 14th year of releasing a report card document for children. And so the main reason or kind of impetus behind this is really for us to gather a very wholesome and comprehensive look at just how active Canadian kids and teens are. But really extending beyond that is not just how much physical activity are they getting, but also looking at sedentary behavior and sleep, but extending further to look at all the various sources of influence. So, for us as researchers, it's important for us to know how active they are, but we need to know what kind of supports are in place to help, that are serving as, barriers or facilitators to getting kids active. And so we look at, in addition to providing grades, like a letter grade that you would get in a report card from A to F, we basically take a giant synthesis or summary of every bit of published literature that is out there looking at kids and their physical activity levels. And then we assign a particular grade, A to F, depending on the percentage of kids that are meeting whatever the guidelines are. And so we look at, as I mentioned, their movement behaviors, and then we extend even further and looking at, okay, where are they getting active? So what environments are important? So we look at school, community, the household, their peer groups, extending further to look at, sources of social support. So from the sense of like government, infrastructure, level of investment at the municipal, provincial, and federal level. And so this really helps give us a very, as I mentioned, a comprehensive look to see, what is the status of, or the state of physical activity among kids in Canada.
I have it, by the way. This is just the report card, but it was 140 some odd pages, the research, the backup, and in the end of it, you've got I think 11 pages of your sources and what you've compiled together. So it's very extensive. It is so relevant. I will say this, though it's a lot, it is very easy to go through. As a mom, it's actually very easy to read. You guys did a very good job in breaking it down. And also breaking down things that terms we've never actually heard of, but they did exist, so you gave them a name. Like I didn't know what physical literacy was, right? I had no idea that was a thing. But now I get it because we practice it. I understand what it means. And this is very important, this idea of, physical literacy. What I wanted to do is actually go through our grades. So I was really surprised when I saw our grades as Canadians. I thought that we were a lot more active than we actually are. And we're not. And it's not to say that this is all negative, but we need to know where we're at to know where we need to go as parents and as families. So what I wanted to do, if that's okay with you, is kind of go over what these grades are, what does this all mean, and what can we do? So if you go online, and we'll show our viewers how to get there, because we're going to show them the website online as well. But you're going to find this report, and you could, it's a PDF document, and you can look at it. But there's also top line, there's top line reports as well, where you don't have to go totally into the weeds into it. So you go into daily behaviors. There's overall physical activity, active play, active transportation, organized sport, which is kind of hard right now, physical education, sedentary behaviors, sleep, and 24-hour movement behaviors. Our overall activity, physical activity, we got a D+. We got a D+. Why? I mean, I thought we were a lot more active than this.
Yeah. So, I think, for some that was surprising in terms of, when you talk to some parents anecdotally, they discuss how, my kids are always on the move. It must not be my kids. And so what we're finding is that they got a grade of D+, and that's for children 5 to 17 we looked at. And so reason for the D+ grade is that only 39% of children in this age group are meeting daily physical activity guidelines, which are 60 minutes of moderate to vigorous physical activity per day. And so when we think of moderate to vigorous, that's more of that higher intensity activity.
Right.
The kids might be breathing harder, maybe starting to sweat, heart rate's going up. They can talk, but probably can't sing their favorite song if you're trying to think of different gauges. And so that's what we're seeing. When it comes to just light activity, we are seeing that they're doing okay, not that bad. So that's more of that, walking or that incidental activity. A little bit less because of some of the restrictions that we've been seeing over the past few months, but it's typically that higher intensity that we see. If we do look at the younger age group, so kind of from infancy all the way up to 4, we're seeing that it's quite a larger number that are meeting their guidelines. They have separate guidelines, but it's more so around 60 to 70% of them are meeting the guidelines in the younger age groups. But that does kind of
physical activity
for their all activity, because under 4, it's not until 3 and 4 that we start to really consider intensity levels. For the younger grades, it's kind of just any type of movement is good movement, and they're aiming for 180 minutes per day for the younger kids of any intensity activity. So we start to see it's really when we start to look at having that higher intensity, we start to see the drop off. But we also see that as we age all throughout the lifespan, our activity levels just tend to decline and sedentary behaviors start to go up. And so it's not so much surprising that when kids move from, say, early childhood into school age, that we start to see a decrease. We see a further decrease when we're moving from childhood to adolescence, and then further into adulthood or adulthood. It kind of tends to track throughout the lifespan, but we also know that individuals that are active and that value physical activity and try to move every day, that same habit tends to also stick around. So that's the good thing, is that, we might see some trends, but we also know that if you're someone who's active or tries to get your kids active at a younger age, the more likely they're going to, active kids become active teens who then become active adults.
Which is going into that physical literacy, right? It's passing on that knowledge to your kids, and what physical is not just physical. It's not just about, being faster or doing really well at this sport. But it does help the mind. We know this. It helps you in so many ways. As adults, we understand this. And I think it's really interesting because we're living in this world where we have so much information. Like, my parents didn't know, right? They had physical jobs and they didn't know. They were immigrants who came here, who, did physical jobs, and they just wanted to relax. They didn't know what physical fitness was and all of that. And here we are raising our kids, and there's so much information that we know. If we do this, this is the result. We know this. Logically, we get this. But then we're also fighting having all this technology where we're just sitting and we're looking at a phone or we're looking at a screen. So these two worlds are kind of colliding. And in this time with COVID and everything that's going on, you really have to push through and support your kids here and practice what you preach if you're going to have them, be physically fit. Now, I went off on a little bit of a tangent.
But you raised some really great points, Voula. I think we're seeing that. I think, you mentioned this kind of whole intergenerational concept that, when your parents came, a lot of their jobs required more physical labor. So even without thinking of like, oh, in addition to the work I do, I also need to find time to work out. I think that's one of the biggest barriers that we're seeing, is that, people are, for the most part, knowledgeable that physical activity is good for them. Sometimes they're, in terms of just how good or how many benefits or how much activity, maybe is something that not everyone knows, but I think most people know that if I'm physically active, that's a good thing. But what we are seeing is that physical activity has really been socially engineered out of our day-to-day lives. From the type of work that we do, some of us still do physical labor, but it's a lot less than it was, so many years or decades ago. Most of us are in some sort of desk-based job or in an office setting. And so that requires us to be sitting quite a bit in front of definitely technology, even how we get from point A to point B, where a lot of times it might have been walking or biking. Now, primarily, we rely on, either public transportation or cars, driving, how we get our kids to school, more so driving them to school. Even our leisure activities, as you mentioned, like with screens. So it's not only how we do our work, it's how we do our schoolwork, it's how we entertain ourselves, and it's also how we socialize with a lot of our peer groups. And so you're kind of, even though we have this understanding that movement is good, our environment isn't necessarily set up to help us live our most active lives. And so that, again, is why, you can't just look at some of these behaviors in isolation, and why, sometimes parents or individuals feel guilty that, willpower should be enough, that I should just get active, when you have your environment isn't necessarily the most conducive to living an active life.
And on top of what we're going through now.
Yeah. So just to make things more complicated, then you add in the whole COVID thing, the removal of, opportunities for people to engage in organized sports, other types of recreational activities, other social distancing. So, losing out on, your playmates, within a more closer physical setting, which of course, like the groups are expanding and some of these restrictions are being lifted. But again, this was like a huge challenge that became not only for individuals, but families specifically, because there was then, the closures of schools and organized activities, and shifting now all of that learning into an online format, which then, we saw a decrease in physical activity and a further increase in sedentary behaviors.
Yeah, I think it's a huge change, but it was a huge wake-up call. I mean, I think we talked about this a little bit offline, but I want to bring this up is, you talked about we've socially engineered out this physical life that we used to have, right? But we've also contracted out the physical fitness for our kids, where we were we were driving them from place to place, and we were making sure we were trying to facilitate that they were in the right place to do the specific activity, but we weren't a part of that. And I get it, we have things to do. And so this whole wake-up call was, were you practicing what you were preaching to your kids? Were you active? And you're telling them to be active. This is a very important key generationally. We can say what we want to our kids, but it's very important that we, especially this time, I see it as an opportunity. You have to see the silver lining in this, that we have an opportunity here to help our kids, but guess what? It's going to help us. We can start practicing and just do a little bit better, which I love about your site. You have this better section where, you can sleep better. You can be, I don't know all of them, but it's on the side and we'll go through it. But I love that idea. And it's not just an idea. It's a mantra, like, just do 10% more than you would have yesterday.
Exactly. And I think that, obviously we're always happy to hear that that's resonating with, some of our audience, I guess, if you will. But that's really like with that whole Betters campaign, that was this whole idea around everything gets better when you get active. And I think oftentimes when we think of physical activity, we think that the primary benefit of getting active is to either lose weight or to get in shape.
Right.
And while there's certainly a role for physical activity in those particular behavior changes, really what we're seeing with physical activity is that the benefits of this behavior go so much further than that particularly around the mental health benefits, the cognitive, so thinking and learning, as well as our relational or social ones. So that's why we had a bunch of betters, like you said, like sleep better, family better, partner better, love better, even sex and poop better. All of these different things, that the more active we are, we're actually going to see noted benefits in all of those different areas. That's going to allow us, to be a better partner, to be a better parent, to take better care of ourselves, in all these different ways. And in fact, we're going to see a much faster return on those types of outcomes, such as, less stress,
Mm-hmm.
less feelings of anxiety or depression. I'm better able to perform at school or do better on a test perform better at work or do better on a test in school. Much faster when we're being active. In fact, even after a single bout of physical activity, we're instantly going to see, and there's tons of evidence, brain scans to show that this physical activity is going to impact the parts of the brains that are responsible for those types of activities. Mm-hmm. And so you're going to get much more bang for your buck if we start focusing on some of these other benefits that come with getting active, not so much these more distal ones like weight loss or fitness that will come, but will just take longer.
Yeah, and I find that in those situations, if that was your motivation, when you go through the journey, your motivation ends up changing when you're on that journey. You just really love how you feel. Mm-hmm. And that could be a result that this happens, that you lose a bit of weight or, but it becomes almost this like addiction that you want to get out, you have to get out. Which is interesting because when the weather wasn't great, when COVID hit and it was a little bit cooler outside, all of a sudden the weather is great. I hadn't seen so many people just taking a walk outside. We're human beings. We need to have this. Yeah. It's important. But part of all of this we were talking about in the whole daily behaviors is the sleep part of it. And, kids getting the right amount of sleep. I mean, I find that they're going to be restless if they haven't done anything physical either, right? Like there's a connection there. If they're sitting there all day on their phone or, playing video games and they haven't gone out or been physically active, if you have to do something in the house, whatever it is, if they haven't done that, they're not going to get the right kind of sleep.
Yeah, absolutely. And so with that, that's why the newest set of guidelines that have come out within Canada, which, as a bit of a bragging moment for Canada in terms of our role within the whole physical activity and sedentary space, is that we came out with the first set of integrative behavior guidelines. So what that means is that, to add to the point that you just said, is that we can't look at these behaviors in silos. We know that if you're active throughout the day, you're going to obviously have less time available to be sitting. Right. And we know that you're going to have a more restful sleep. And then if you have a good sleep, then you have the energy to do the things that you need to carry out the next day. But the opposite is also true, that if we're not very active, or more sedentary, that displaces the amount of time we have to be active. We're more likely to have a less restful sleep. It's going to be harder for us to fall asleep, or, screen exposure right before bed with blue light and all that stuff can throw off our sleep time. And then the next day, we're going to have less energy to get active or to do the things, and it continues. And so that's why it's really important to look at the whole 24-hour clock. So this kind of thing of like the whole day matters. And Canada was the first one that came out with these in 2016 for children and youth, and then 2017 for the early years. And this fall will be for adults and older adults. And these have now been adopted by the World Health Organization as the way to go. And so they've created their own off that. So that was a big moment for us in that area. I know. So that's the fact that we're doing this, and that is just the shift. But, as you mentioned, and we saw this with COVID, is that when we lost opportunities to be active, to be outdoors, when we were still unsure about the virus, there were a lot of unknown questions. So I think some parents were hesitant about letting their kids be outside or to play, or where they could go to play, especially, if you lived in a condo, which is, very common in Toronto, there's not necessarily a backyard. And so if they couldn't go to the park, where would they go? And so just more time being spent indoors in front of screens, whether it be for school or to talk with family and friends, or just, to do something to fill the time. We then saw that not only was physical activity decreasing, screen time spiking, but we also noticed that there was issues with sleep, getting your kids to sleep at the same time every day, because there was this loss of sense of routine, right? That we didn't have, which I know is very important, especially if you have younger kids. So we definitely saw that. And so that's why, definitely the work that we do at ParticipACTION is really promoting this whole 24-hour kind of movement idea, and really, the whole day matters. So not just thinking in silos.
Yeah, and it's a 360 approach, and being very present with your kids and with yourself, and understanding, being very intentional. If you're going to be on your phone, Let it be for whatever reason. Don't just like, dilly-dally kind of, because you can go in a rabbit hole with that, right?
Absolutely.
And your kids see that. And I saw that in one of the, I printed everything out. I saw what was very telling was is the increase of basically the addiction, or how long the adults are spending on their phone. And then they also surveyed kids and how they saw their parents. Whereas I think parents thought that it wasn't too bad, but it actually was. How the kids are seeing, their parents, and they're modeling this type of behavior of being on their phone, right?
For sure. Yeah. And that's like kind of what we're seeing. Like you said, that parents think, and we do it ourselves, we do it ourselves. People in general tend to underestimate how much time they spend on their screens. But then when those same kids were asked about their parents' screen use habits, they found that a lot of them, they actually declared, I think even 30% actually thought their parents had an addiction to their screens,
Right.
particularly around phones. And I think that really kind of, sends a flag up in terms of how often are screens kind of taking away or interrupting special moments that we could be having with our kids. And so, some of the stuff that we tried to do at ParticipACTION, and, I like how you mentioned that our stuff was easy to understand, which is great, because that's one of our main kind of goals at ParticipACTION is, serving as a thought leader, and particularly my role as the knowledge translation manager is, how do we get that more technical, research heavy information and distill it or share it in a way that's usable for the people best able to do something with it? And in this case, parents or, teachers, healthcare professionals are the ones that, are going to be caring for our kids. We want to make sure that this information is as usable as possible. And so, definitely we're seeing that, recommendations is screens aren't going anywhere. So it doesn't make sense to think about, no screens, absolutely no screens, none of the time, because that's just not reasonable. Even from in terms of what we do for school and work, we require screens, but we can start to think about how can we use them a bit more responsibly or healthily. And so, even if you think of starting in your household, two easy things would be, kind of set up a family media plan, or take some sort of family.
I saw that. That was very cool.
Yeah. So, or a family audit, just in terms of trying to think about like, how much time do we really spend on our screens? Because maybe some of us might be surprised to know. I mean, I know even on my iPhone, a lot of times it tracks how much time you're on your phone and divides it up via like work or social media or different things like that, just to give a trigger, like, a marker, so you kind of know where you're starting. But another easy one is to have screen-free zones within the house. So designate some areas in the house where you just don't have screens. And so one example is the bedroom. Just no screens within the bedroom. We know that throws off sleeping. We know that it delays sleeping. We know that that's also, when we might be engaging in extended periods of screen use, particularly, when it's lights out. So to have no screens in the bedroom. And then another one is just no screens at the dinner table. So we know that when we can, not only does it take away from the time or conversation you might be having with your family, whatever that looks like, or even if you're individually just eating, because sometimes our schedules don't always line up. But we also know that when we have a screen, we tend to overconsume.
Right.
So when people talk about weight gain and screens, it's not so much that the screen itself causes the weight gain, it's the behaviors we tend to engage in while watching screens. So we tend to eat more, we tend to reach for unhealthier snacks, whether they be high in sugar, salt, or fat. We also are exposed to more the content of what we're exposed to. So advertising for like junk food and things like that. So, just things to think about. So during mealtime and bedrooms are two good places where we just don't have screens, and it goes for everyone. So that includes parents, like no checking emails, like at the dinner table, that, take the 30 minutes and just, eat with your family. That's one example. Other ones that I've heard of is that, trying to look at ways to make active time or family time active time. So when you're spending time with your family and kids, is really trying to think about how you can just make those moments together more active. And so it's not about adding something extra to a parent's plate and thinking like, oh, in addition of everything you're doing, also need to worry about, these things. But, if every Friday night was kind of your day as a family to do something, I know for me growing up, that was for us like the big day. And so we would, for the longest time, and it's still something we enjoy, would be like movies. Like that would be the thing. We would go to like Blockbuster when it was around and go and get a movie. And, my mom would make popcorn, and that would be something we would do. And then eventually we got a family dog, and we still watched the movie that night. But before we did that, we would go on like a half-hour walk in the neighborhood. And that was something that we could all do. It wasn't necessarily very long. It was maybe 20 minutes, but it was something we could do all year round. So even if it was cold out and it was because, the dog needs to go out. So we did that. And so it didn't take away from the time that we were doing. It didn't take away from, having that bonding time or having that time to catch up or adding more to an already busy schedule.
Right.
It was just trying to find different ways to add a bit more movement or more steps to what we were already doing.
This is great. It's so simple. And I know people get it and they hear it and they're like, yeah. But you do not know how much your kids look forward to that time, that they just want to spend time with you. And if you can schedule a movie night, like you said, and adding something like that, taking the dog, or even if you don't have a dog, you just go for a walk, whatever it is.
Yeah, absolutely.
But there's something even deeper there. And you mentioned, no screens at the dinner table, things like this. What we're losing out on because of screens is skills that we're not developing. Young kids don't look at each other in the eye when you're having a conversation. Is engaging. We're almost losing a little bit of that. And I know this is a little bit off on a tangent, but I find that it's not just, screen. It's the things we're losing out on and the things we're replacing. Like you said, for example, we're eating. It's not just about the screen, but we're eating certain things because we have the screen in front of us, but we're also missing out of things that, when you're not looking at each other at the dinner table or going for a walk and having a conversation,
for sure.
Everything in media, especially with the young kids, is very quick sound bites. They have zero, retention, and you want them to, even if you're going for a walk, I would hope, is have a conversation that lasts longer than a few minutes, right?
Yeah. No, I think those are all very good points. And I mean, if you talk, there are some parents that are doing some really creative things, like, some of the recommendations we had in this report was even some of them created kind of, what was the word? Oh, device bins in the house, that when you were going to do an activity as a house, you just, everyone threw their device in that bin or basket or bag, whatever you want to call it. But as, one great way that it's something that's like, no, when we have this time together, it's screen free. There's no kind of temptation to go and grab the screen. And it's something that if your kids are seeing you do it as well as a parent, that's like, no, this is all of us. This is not just you, but I need to keep my phone on me for X, Y, and Z. Of course, there might be very rare occasions that you really needed to have your phone on you, but otherwise, have it in there. Schedule when you are looking for family outings, can it be a bike ride? Can it be, we're going to go on a picnic, but it's close enough to park, we're going to walk there together? Right. Or, just thinking of different things. And I know sometimes it gets harder if you have teens as they start to get older. Right. Sometimes, they want that autonomy, or their interests change, which, is normal. It happens to all of us. And so I think one great way to get around that, and that seems to be pretty successful, is, everyone taking every week, or however you decide to break it up, is that you rotate who is responsible for choosing the activity.
Love that.
For that week. And so this is not only a great way to get exposed to new activities and to try something new, but it also ensures that everyone has that opportunity to think of something they can get excited about, or like, oh, it's my week to plan something. And it doesn't have to be huge. It can be very small, but just something in that, the only parameter is that it just has to involve movement.
I love that.
It's a bike ride. It's a walk. I set up a scavenger hunt, like whatever you want it to be. doing that. And I think that also adds the fun into it. I think oftentimes, and particularly as a researcher with any clinicians that I work with, what we often see is that, or what people tend to focus on is that it's something unenjoyable, or that it seems like a drag or an added tax that we need to do. And I think sometimes we're thinking about it wrong. I think if you think about like when you were most young and were outside running around and doing all these things, you didn't really think about like, oh, I'm being physically active or I'm exercising. Like you were just having fun. You were chasing after your friends or playing hide and seek or, exploring like bugs or whatever it was that you did when you were younger, swimming in the summer. But it was fun. And so I think if we try to integrate more fun into what we're doing, it's going to be something that we not only enjoy more, but it's going to end up being something that we end up repeating. If you think about something you don't like, even as an adult, like for me, I know like gym, unless if it's a group-based class, I know I don't get a very good workout or not very active if I'm just by myself on the machine, just like walking. But that's me. So the likelihood of me coming back and wanting to do that are very slim. Right. So I either choose group-based activities or, some sort of class, because I know that I'm guaranteed to push myself. I'm going to work and be more motivated than if I'm just left to my own devices. Yeah. Because I know, and it's not something I enjoy. I don't really enjoy the gym setting in that way. And so that's something to think about is, play to your interests, play to what you find is fun. And when it comes to physical activity, we definitely want people to repeat the behavior. And so that's where I think that aspect of fun and enjoyability really come into play and should be emphasized a bit more heavily.
Yeah. It's our responsibility right now as parents. I know it's a lot, but we have to take it on. We are their guardians, their supporters, and I know it's really tough, and this is why we're having this conversation to give some ideas. But we can do it. It's something that we can do, and it's not that it's not rocket science. It can be very simple things. And your website, which we are going to put up, and we're going to go through, offers really great ideas, tips, and different ways to support your children and family. I just want to go through a couple more things on the report card, and then we'll go through the website together. The strategies and investments, there's a couple of things that right now in this time are kind of, they're a little bit in the back because we can't go to school. It's summer, but school was out since March. And then even the community side of it is very difficult right now. So there's a real emphasis on the household, which we've gone into a little bit already. But we got a grade of C in this area where I'm going to go through this if you don't mind. We talk about the percentage of parents who facilitate physical activity and sport opportunities for their children. So we're talking about volunteering, coaching, driving, paying for memberships, etc. The percentage of parents who meet the Canadian physical activity guidelines for adults, so for themselves, right? So we're talking about modeling, and we go into the children and youth with friends and peers who have this. So it's about the people, the very close village, the very close one that's surrounding the child. We got a C on that.
Yes. Yeah. Okay. So we're seeing, like you mentioned, so we look at the activity levels of, adults. So some of the most prominent, figures in children's lives, we're seeing that only about, not even 20% of them are meeting their physical activity guidelines. So that means about 80% of them are falling short of meeting, the recommended physical activity guidelines of 150 minutes of moderate to vigorous physical activity per week. And so one way to think of this is like, if we try to flip it and look more at this positive framing, is that, this is 80% of Canadian parents or adults that have the potential to be gaining even more benefits in their lives and to bring in even more kind of healthful and goodness and all these different things. And so, if we see that, and we see that parents are primarily, and even more so during COVID, more than any other time, we're spending so much time with our family and in much closer proximities than ever before. It's no reason, it's not that surprising to think, if adults aren't doing that great, and our kids aren't seeing us getting active or seeing us talking about it or valuing it, then it's not that surprising to see that maybe that trickles down and that kids don't feel
Of
the
course.
same here. And then same with their peer groups. If we know that, if I'm, a 12-year-old girl and I'm not very active, but the majority of us aren't active, then you don't necessarily have that same to play off of. Or when you think about the types of activities you want to engage in with your friends, they might not be activities that involve movement or sport or physical activity.
If I can just interject here, one thing I did see, there was a big disparity between boys and girls.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
And I don't like saying that. I mean, I have a daughter too. I have a daughter and a son. But when I saw that, I'm like, gosh, really? Still now?
Well, and exactly. And that trend is still extending, that boys tend to be more active and less sedentary than girls. And that tends to continue all throughout the lifespan. And so part of it is because of this gender norming that for the longest time, it was okay for boys to be more rambunctious and to engage in, more roughhousing or more physical activities, where girls were maybe steered more towards, playing house, or, they're more dainty or fragile. And so they don't need to be doing that. And I think we see the biggest jump in adolescence. And a lot of this has to do with either there's not the same amount of male role models, or female role models compared to male. So when you think of the majority of professional athletes that are promoted and celebrated, mostly male. When you think about the facilities or equipment that are available, not necessarily this, or coaching staff aren't necessarily there for girls. And then, also in terms of their peer groups, interest change of like, oh, but my friends aren't really playing sports.
Yeah.
I don't want to. There's that fear of having being sweaty, the red face, the frizzy hair after working out. And also just there has been stuff around also sexual orientation that people have said like, oh, well, if you do this, that, and misappropriately labeling people. And so that's some of the reasons, it's a complex thing, but I think, if we can kind of take away, all physical activity should be gender neutral, and that this is something that benefits everyone.
Yes.
And really encouraging that, and to kind of look for these opportunities where we can limit some of those barriers that women are facing and young girls are facing when it comes to activities. So ensuring that they have the same access, that we're taking them to sporting events, that we're also getting them excited about sport, and to really start embracing that red face and like sweaty hair, because they just did something amazing for themselves.
What I saw too, just on a side note with our daughter when she plays basketball, is the difference in coaching a female athlete and a male. I'm like, why is this any different? Why? And I found that some coaches were so focused on, well, she said this, she said that. It was almost like I couldn't understand. I'm like, no, they're here to do a job. They have to play their role in the sport that they're playing, whatever it is, if it's a point guard or a shooter or whatever. Can we just focus on the sport? Whereas I found, and I don't think they did this intentionally, I really don't, but and then the girls feed into it, right? That it was like, oh, well, this person said this and and we weren't treating them like we would have boys and coaching them, and you're here for a sport. So there's a point there. There's something a little bit deeper there that, we should take all of that out of there. And, when it comes to physical activity, like you said, embrace that when your girl gets herself all sweaty and, ponytails all messed up, whatever it is, right? In the end, we know that boys, girls, adults, all of us, we benefit from moving around. We benefit in so many ways. And right now, as parents, we have to take on that role and encourage our kids. And we're going to go through the website now, but this here, I want to read out because I felt it hit home to me. I couldn't have said it any better, and I'm going to read it. Families can support children and youth in achieving healthy physical activity, sedentary and sleep behaviors by encouraging, facilitating, modeling, setting expectations, and engaging in healthy movement behaviors with them. This is so important. This is like, I want people to print this out. The role that we play for our kids is huge all the time, in all ways, always. However, now more than ever, we need to be there consciously and very present in a physical sense for our kids. So I wanted to, this is on the report, I want people to check it out. And we're going to go on the website right now. So bear with me as I
absolutely. But yeah, as you get the screen up, that statement that you just read, I mean, obviously super happy that it resonated with you and your family. But yeah, that is essentially our kind of consensus statement or cover story for this year's report card, and why we wanted to take such a focused look at the impact of families on children's physical activity levels. And that really, you know, when you think about helping your kids get more active, it's not just always having, you know, you can support them in so many different ways. You can talk about them about, you can talk to them about physical activity. You can encourage them, you know, when they're trying to improve a skill like their layup or something, or even, you know, with their running or anything that they're doing, encourage them, provide positive prompts. Set restrictions. So, you know, household rules in terms of, you know, we were talking about like no screens here, after school, you know, no screens until, you know, homework's done, whatever that might be, consistent bed and wake times, but also getting active with them. So co-participation is huge, and probably one of the biggest influences on our kids' activities is, you know, yes, it's great to talk about it. Yes, it's great for our kids to see us as adults getting active. But what's really important is actually taking the time to get active with your kids. You know, this can be two birds with one stone. You get active, they get active, you get to bond together. So you get a lot out of all that. But the more that you're able to, you know, go on that walk with them or go on that weekend bike ride with them, is going to have some very, you know, positive impacts on their activity levels. And so that's why for us at ParticipACTION, we really wanted to emphasize the role of the family and, you know, to help make our family time active time, and to, you know, make physical activity something that we value as a family and maybe part of our family identity.
Couldn't have said it better. You're the expert. So, I mean, I could be the expert at my own kid, but when you have done this research and there's commonalities, there's things that kind of go across the board, and having you on here with me, I'm really, really grateful. I really am
happy to be here.
Thanks. So, okay. So here, do you see the website? You see it on your side? Okay.
Yep.
So, this is the report card here that I'm telling everybody about. You have to go and check this out. It's great. And you're going to take me through this. So take me through some of this. What should I click on here?
Yeah, so if you do want to, so here's kind of our main page. So we have everything from our Everything Gets Better campaign that we had mentioned, our new, so if you want to click on there, basically this brings you to this whole idea of how everything gets better when you get active. And so when you scroll down, it's going to bring you to all of our 24 betters. So all the different ways physical activity can help you live your best life. And so when you click on each of these, whatever one you choose, it's going to provide you a little bit more information with exactly how physical activity can help you sleep or age better. It's going to provide some recos on what to do. And the best type of activity to do to kind of enhance that particular area of focus, and also give other recommendations. You know, if you like this better, you might also be interested in this. And so for each of us, are the betters that we might want to improve can vary.
We'll say sleep better. We click on that.
So sleep better. So if we click on here, and you scroll down, it's going to kind of give us an overview of the relationship between, or association between, sleep and physical activity. It's everything we do at ParticipACTION is completely evidence-based and evidence-informed. So we have a large advisory network that's with all the kind of who's who across Canada with regards to sport, physical activity, and recreation at various levels of government, a number of different researchers and clinicians and other types of organizations that are all within this field. And then for the report card and anything that I do, we work specifically with a research advisory group. So here's an example of, you know, a lot of them have quick little snippet videos in terms of how physical activity might impact our behavior. So some of them are very short.
Physical activity reduces stress.
Oh, I love it.
So you can sleep better.
And
I
so,
want to see her.
this whole page, again, just walks through all the different ways that how physical activity can help you sleep, and then provide you with a number of tips on what to do to enhance your sleep through physical activity.
So
if you're someone that's new to physical activity, we have our Stay Active, Stay Healthy. So this is kind of walking you into our blog, which we publish quite regularly in terms of different articles, things that work to help you get active, or different areas. And, you know, again, we want everything that we put out there to be very family friendly, very actionable. So it gives you a call to action at the end of every one. We have our also Get Started plan that if you're new to physical activity, it's going to walk you through how to get active. Also, in the last year, we had our app. So you see our Track the Physical Activity and Get the app.
Yeah,
a free app. So this is a great opportunity that if you're looking for some sort of, you know, way to track your activity, this is a great one. It's free, but you know, chances to win prizes. So if you meet your daily and weekly goals, there's a number of different prizes or entries into different sweepstakes that you can, or contests rather, that you can be entered into. But what's great is that our app has built-in machine learning. And so what it does is it ends up, the more that you use it, it feeds this machine, so kind of this AI type thing, but it ends up giving you tailored information that's going to help you meet your very specific goal. So it's going to be a lot less generic than some other apps. So it's not just about tracking, but it's about providing you with the best information. Here, so if we are on our Family Better page, and so one of the main kind of takeaways from the report card was to take this active family pledge. And so we've kind of been encouraging Canadian families to take this pledge, you know, kind of make this declaration that, you know, we, the Vanderloo families, are putting like a stake in the ground to say that we're going to make a, you know, promise to ourselves as a family that we're going to try to be more active together as a family. And so by doing that, you know, a little bit of a social play in terms of you can share your stories, share pictures of your family, of what you're doing to get active, an opportunity to win some great prizes. But also I think it's a great way to kind of showcase and maybe brag a bit about what you and your family are doing to get active, no matter how small. But it also kind of serves as a great little repository or database for other parents, that if you're looking for ideas on what to do with your kids, you can kind of see what other real life Canadian families are doing. We have here our early years 24-hour movement guidelines. So if you want a bit more information in terms of, depending on the age of your kids, how much activity should they be getting, how much sleep, and how much screen time for, you know, optimal health, this is a great place to go. And we do have guidelines for all of the various age groups. So from early years, children and teens, adults and older adults. So if you're thinking about your grandparents or your parents, starting to think about stuff like that. So you can see the other guidelines here for all the different age groups. And then right at the beginning, when you first logged into the page, you see everything about our report card. So if you click on here.
Click on here?
Yeah, learn more.
Yep.
So here, it's going to bring you to our report card page, and it is going to provide you with information on the report card. You can download the report card.
Which is what I did.
Yeah, so you can download the full report card, which is, like 100 plus pages, but as well, so it's dense. It has a lot of different, it's not hard to read, but there's just a lot there. But we do have a highlight report that if you just kind of want the top level, what were the grades and what were the main statistics, I would encourage you to look there. So if you click on the report card summary, even for example, and keep scrolling down, it's going to give you some key stats. But if we keep going down right to the bottom, we are going to see all of our tools and resources. So lots of information here just in terms of how kids are stacking up. This is an overview of all of the grades for the various 14 indicators. And then right near the bottom, you're going to have a list of tools and resources. So here you have, so just up a little bit.
Here?
Yeah, right there. So tools and resources. So you see we have the full report card, the highlight report card.
Right.
And so this is where if you do the highlight report, it's much shorter and it's just going to give you the kind of high level stuff. So the basics, but the most important takeaways. We've created a number of different kind of infographics that are kind of one pagers that if you want to print them off, have them on your fridge. Very kind of user friendly, very lay friendly and public facing. So it just gives you, again, the kind of main basics, tips and tricks to help support your kids in having better sleep, physical activity, or sedentary behavior.
I got to tell you, I have to. I know you said you would, but you have to tell your team that you guys have done a phenomenal job on this.
Thank you. No, we'll be definitely like happy to share that news. And you know, we are very active in terms of our social channels and emails. So we always want to try to stay engaged with our users, which, you know, aren't just families. It kind of goes beyond. It can be individuals, a lot of moms, and then, you know, obviously the sector, so different organizations.
Right.
But we really want to ensure that everything we're doing is usable by the people that, you know, matter most. We do all this so that we can ensure that all Canadians are living their most active life. And so we really try to ensure that we're putting out the content that people want to see. We try to deliver it in a variety of different ways, or package it in a way that isn't so hard to understand and that you feel like you can actually do something with it. And that's why my role as a knowledge translation manager, when I am putting all of this out and putting this information as we put it on the web, how we put it out in our report cards or even our infographics, the app, it's really important that, you know, yes, everything we say is evidence-based and we have the evidence and we have the citations and everything to back it up. But we need to make sure that we're taking out that technical jargon that does create a bit of a barrier for people, not, you know.
And it defeats the purpose, right?
Exactly.
I mean,
we want this information to stay relevant and usable. And, you know, if it's just staying circulating among us academics, it's not really going to truly drill down and be distilled down to those that are better positioned to actually make those changes than us as researchers. So.
Absolutely. And I think that as a mom, this is where I'm grateful, because to your point, right? If I don't understand it, there's no point. It's sitting over there and it's not doing anything for anybody. And what's really important in all this is that we are all on the same page and we're having the conversation in the right context.
Yes.
And right now, like I said, seeing this report card, all of this information, it blew me back a little bit, blew me away. And I didn't realize, you know, where we were at. So that's why it's helpful, so that we can all as Canadians come on the same page and understand fully. It's not about just the physical activity. It's about everything that surrounds it and what comes out of it. And as a country, as a society, it makes us better, but it starts from the home. It all starts from the home. So in times that are unpredictable right now, the one thing that you can control is your behavior in the home and how you contribute to it. And where are you coming from? Are you coming from a place that's positive and trying to get through this together, or not? And so that's something that we can control. And your study you're part of our village in that way. I said this to the other lady that we had interviewed, but it's important that maybe we're not going and taking our kids to soccer practice right now. Well, things are starting to open up, but you know what I mean? There's no school or teachers, but organizations like yours, you're part of that support, right? And we need to be encouraged. And I appreciate ParticipACTION. I appreciate you being with me here today and having this conversation, and sharing this information. It's very important. Thank you very much for that.
Oh, well, thank you so much, Voula, and obviously to your organization as well. I mean, we were thrilled to get the invite to come on and do this talk, and, you know, happy to help obviously share the work that we're doing. But, you know, really important that, you know, we're hearing from, you know, folks such as yourself to kind of like, you know, are we on the right track? How can we make this work for you? And so, you know, we're always open for suggestions. And, you know, I really hope this helps, you know, resonate with some of your other viewers and your other kind of contributors or your membership, and hopefully that this will just help, give a little bit more food for thought. It's not about creating more guilt. It's really just about rethinking your daily life that you're already doing, and how can we sneak in a little bit more steps to what we're already doing. So when we're taking our phone calls at home with friends or, colleagues, work colleagues, can you stand while you do it? Can you walk around while you do it? Different things like that. So
you mean we could have been like jogging and doing this interview?
Yeah, this whole time.
Can you imagine?
But those are things. So sometimes it's just, this idea of like work smarter, not harder kind of thing.
Yeah.
And I say that we don't need to make some shifts, but it doesn't all have to be brand new. We don't have to completely upturn our lives to start.
I think what you're absolutely right. And if I can only add anything on that, is to be very conscious of what we're doing. And
be mindful.
Be mindful, be conscious, be very present, and do a little bit better, which is, I love that you guys have that on your website and is part of your, what you're putting out there for all of us. And you're helping us do that. So if I'm going to put the website details there, the app details, and all your information, if anyone wants to reach out to you guys or look at your website, thank you again. And
yes, thank you so much, Voula.
I appreciate you, and I know you've helped me. So at least you've helped one person, but I'm confident that you've helped a lot of others during this episode.
Yeah.
Thanks so much.
Oh, no problem. Thank you so much for having me.
Okay, take care. Bye, everyone.